Trump tweeted today, Iran made a very big mistake. Later on, of course, journalists in the United States asked him what he thinks about the situation and what he's going to do, and he answered, "You will soon find out," which is a little bit worrying because it looks like a military conflict. But before we go ahead, I would like to welcome in the show Youssef Alshammari, Editor-in-Chief, C Markets. Good evening, Youssef, and thank you for joining me.
Good evening, Alexandra. Pleased to be with you.
Youssef, as I just said, it looks like there is going to be a military conflict between the United States and Iran. Do you think that the two countries are going to manage to avoid it?
Well, the situation currently in the Gulf region is certainly under tension. The event that downing of a U.S. drone this morning in the Gulf by the Iranian forces is certainly a significant escalation in the tension in the region. Just look at the oil prices. There's been an increase of about 3.3% in prices just in one session. The rise of about $2.7 for Brent, and similar increase for WTI. Such indicators certainly shows that the Gulf region is currently under tension, and of course, I believe that both sides are trying to avoid the event of having a military conflict, as well as the countries in the region.
And on the other side, I wanted to specify that the drone's downing was announced hours after the Iran-allied Houthi rebels in Yemen claimed responsibility for firing a missile that struck a desalination plant in Saudi Arabia, which is a U.S. ally, as we very well know. On Wednesday, a rocket hit a compound in southern Iraq used by ExxonMobil, which is an U.S. giant. So in case this conflict goes further, which is the most likely scenario so far, considering what Trump just hinted today, do you think that we are going to witness a supply shock of the U.S. crude?
Well, any escalation in the region certainly could have an impact on supplies, because you have a third of global oil supplies passing through the Strait of Hormuz, and it's certainly not in the interest of anybody to have any military conflict in that region. It is in the interest of the whole global community to continue to have a smooth passage of global supplies to the international oil market. However, I certainly would think that currently there is enough supplies of oil in the market. Just look into the price. There's been the increase in the price has not been so significant before we witness any political tension in the region. In fact, the prices have risen before we see the increase in the political escalation due to the decline in the U.S. stock. Just this week, the EIA reported a withdrawal of the stocks of about 3.11 million barrels of crude, bringing its crude to about 483 million barrels of crude oil. So that, in fact, the decline in the U.S. stock has led to an increase in the price just before we see a political escalation in the region. So in fact, maintaining the security and the peace in the region will certainly maintain the flow of oil, avoiding any shocks or disruption in supplies. And that is so important to maintain a stable market. I wouldn't comment on if there has been a military conflict. Of course, that's not in the interest of anybody, and any conflict will certainly affect this and create any disruption in oil supplies, and certainly have an impact on the market. But currently, under normal scenarios, the disruption of oil will continue as it is. As we know that, there's been statements regarding the oil tankers, which have had to have a tax by Iranian forces. There's been two or more than two tankers that were attacked. It's been some reports saying that oil tankers in that region could be escorted by U.S. forces over the next period, and that will ensure that there will be some continued security of oil tankers passing through the Strait of Hormuz and the Gulf and the Arabian Gulf region, excluding the possibility of any political conflict.
Youssef, how likely is a $100 per barrel oil price in the very short term? Because this is what many analysts and strategists are predicting in case of military actions coming from the United States.
I wouldn't see a price reaching $100 a barrel too soon. Reaching such or doubling a price, it could take time. But of course, that assumption assumes that exclude the possibility of a military intervention in the region. So that's our forecast that we are currently building on at sea markets. Looking to, for example, previous years when during the U.S. invasion in Iraq, the war that when Iraq attacked Kuwait. So situations like this could show you how oil market reacts into wartime, and that it shows that it takes time for the price of oil to increase, because the price of oil is dependent on supply. If there is a disruption in supply, certainly prices could increase. Currently, there is enough oil in the market. In fact, the OPEC is trying to cut and reduce its production in order to bring inventories down of the United States and OECD. So that's why we at Sea Markets do not think that a price of $100 a barrel is to be reached too soon.
Well, that's pretty interesting. On the other side, we are kind of witnessing a crisis in the energy sector. Do you agree with that, or you think there are not crises in the energy sector, considering that we have geopolitical crisis all around the world and prices are still pretty low, or at least for many of the OPEC oil producers?
Certainly the energy sector is currently underinvested, especially the oil and gas sector. And that's, again, because it depends on oil prices. The oil industry has always been trying to achieve a price that is above $70 a barrel. And that has not been really achieved over the past, this year and the past year. Prices have not been really that high in order to create investment in the sector. That's in terms of the energy sector. In terms of renewables and the climate change, the development of alternative energy sector is also dependent on oil markets. If oil continues to be cheaper and prices of natural gas are also competitive, then the development of alternative energy sector will take much longer than what we would expect. Still, there is no agreement on a global carbon price, and that makes the energy transition not easily achievable as one would think. So, for energy transition to happen, number one, we need to see how the oil market is behaving over the next few years, and will there be enough? The cost of alternatives will be alternative energy source of energy will be cost competitive, and will the world agree on a global carbon price? So there are many different factors that one needs to look at in order to achieve a sustainable energy sector in the next years.
Youssef, let me ask you one last question. Do you think what is going on right now, I know you just mentioned that there is not going to be a military conflict according to you so far, but do you think what is going on right now is going to somehow impact OPEC's following decisions and following meeting?
Of course, when it comes to OPEC, certainly we speculate that there will be a continuation of the OPEC Plus agreement in the second half of 2019. However, and it seems that we don't think that there will be a deeper cut below 1.2 million barrels. The Iranians' attacks on oil tankers in the Gulf region certainly create some sort of tension. Currently, OPEC has finally agreed on a date that is the 1st of July, and for the OPEC meeting, followed by the meeting with non-OPEC countries on the 2nd of July. However, we think the result of the meeting is a continued OPEC Plus agreement in the second half of 2019. Some undesirable events have certainly happened from the Iranians in the Gulf region that could possibly bring possibly some tensions in the region, and that's nobody would want to see. But for OPEC Plus agreement, we think it's going to continue in the second half of 2019, led by OPEC Plus, especially Saudi Arabia leading the negotiations with non-OPEC that is led by Russia.
Thank you very much, Youssef Alshammari, Editor-in-Chief, C Markets. Thank you for joining me, and thank you for your analysis.
Always a pleasure.
Well, this is all from us for this evening. Thanks for